Hey everybody, it's that time again. Jim Messina here with VintageDrumsTalk.com. It's showtime, as you can see behind me. This is the Chicago Vintage and Custom Drum Show. It's all happening. It's Saturday. Show's been open an hour maybe or so. It's looking really good. We walked around the floor. A lot of vintage stuff, which is what we're going to be bringing to you today. Okay? So come on with us. Let's go. It's World War II time. Joe Mekler again. Ha ha! They call him Joey Boom. That's right, man.
Always good to see you. Always as well.
I'll tell you, you're hard to track down. I came to the booth earlier and you were busy.
Well, the fella that we'll talk about in a minute, he came to me with this tom and said, I think I have something you'd be very interested in. And I was like, oh man, you know what? You're right. So,
you know you're in trouble then.
Oh boy.
I see some new things here. Look at this.
Yes, sir. So what we got going on here is these are the Leedy and Ludwig knob tune kit that actually is the predecessor to what we've talked about in the past of the Cecil Stroop design there.
Yeah.
So what goes on here is, with the internal system, is you tune the drum this way by tightening the knobs, and then what happens is this ring pushes up against the head to tune it this way with no keys whatsoever. Unfortunately, there was quite a few design flaw issues with these drums, which was the death nail for these after 3 years. But however, as a result of that death nail, Kahn said, we've had enough with our percussion. They sold the stuff all back off. Unfortunately, George WWII got kicked to the curb.
I was going to say that was it for George WWII.
But however, because of the failure here, it allowed the future of vintage drums to create some amazing things. Because in my mind, George WWII said, I love the way this looks, and created his turret lugs.
Now, if you guys don't know, the George WWII turret lugs are the predecessor to
Camco.
There you go, which ended up being
DW.
There you go. Now that's where you young guys are going to know that the turret lugs that you see on DW drums today, those were made years before George WWII was responsible for that.
Absolutely.
So, yep.
And I feel as though that they were, as a result of this being a failure by that. Plus Ludwig got his name back, etc., etc.
So it turned out great.
Absolutely.
What do we have here?
What we have here is, this is a 37 lyre badge, and it says it's called a lyre badge because it actually has the little instrument of the lyre on it.
Right where I'm pointing to, yeah.
This was the last badge that Ludwig had his name on, because then Kahn said you can't put your name on the badge, hence from this point forward WFL. Because Ludwig was like, you own my name, you don't own my initials.
Exactly.
So I'm going with it. Now there's some very interesting things with this kit is, the lugs, which they made very few of. These are the pressed direct thread lugs. Now what's amazing too is behind this is there's one plate that both screws go into.
Square plate.
Yes, not individual lugs. The color, this white Avalon, is unusual because it's real linear, like the 70s, but it's still quite random. And this tom mount is one of the earliest mounts that passes into the drum.
Yes,
and it's not a clip mount. It's this contraption early off of the console. And then another thing, I know it may be hard to get a camera shot on it, but the brackets are not the typical boxed brackets. They're
see
this
that.
fleur-de-lis shape. And when I took this apart, there's extra holes because it was either late on a Friday or early on a Monday. Because when I took the bracket out and put it in the other holes, the top of the bracket was interfering with the Imperial. So it's actually a factory drilling error that's on this. So there's a lot of anomaly going here. The black paint was completely destroyed, so I brought it back to the wood, which is period correct. I thought it just looked so much nicer than fresh black paint.
This drum looks like it has a lot of provenance to it. Who was the former owner of this drum?
Funny?
He means Bunny Carlos.
Yeah, yes, I do.
Now that's something
And
we're
then
going to talk later.
the nickel snare is a part of it as well, which is beautiful. It's the era, but it's the single throw. Where later they had,
yes, just
you
they
know,
got
the double
twin,
throw with that.
Like the one I've got is a twin strainer like this, but it uses the same lever
Absolutely. They were just completely side by
right
side.
next to each other.
So you had wire and gut or both at the same time.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, Joe's got some new stuff. This is cool. Speaking of new stuff, this is brand new for Joe. He got this right here, what, at the show?
I literally just brought this over to the booth. And this is exactly what we've talked about before.
Yeah.
Behind me here, the only difference is this is in absolute original condition. If you look at it, they're brand new condition. They were played for
Yeah, really. I mean,
very
I have
short
one of
period
these.
of time,
That's
and then
amazing.
were stored in the closet for over 70 years.
Yeesh.
And again, it came with also the wood
There
tone
you go.
control.
Now this I have not seen. I've seen, you know, the wooden snare stand,
Yes.
the wooden pedals, wooden hi-hat.
Yes.
Never have I seen the wooden muffler.
And it screws, that's how you adjust it. The wood, the threads, everything is wooden.
Is this a cataloged item?
Yes, it is.
I'd like that's oh, and you even have an example of it. Huh?
So here's the original
Where is it?
catalog. And actually the pencil strips, there it is. There it is, the catalog. And the pencil markings here in the margins
Yes.
are actually Ludwig's writing. And I've got a certificate of authenticity with that as well. Yeah,
Oh, that's great.
so man, it's pretty amazing on
Nothing
how
like provenance, huh?
it's beautiful. And on top of this, ironically, and those are the bass drum legs,
Also, I've never seen these.
which are basically just wooden dowels.
That's all they are. Yeah.
all they really are. And then, of course, the other.
Now here's he's getting a snare stand here, but this is cool.
Which is the original snare stand.
Now
But now
this
there's.
is like your other one that you had.
But there's something which, again, is amazing. The difference, if you flip that over, which mine doesn't do, these stay loose so that it can be stowed and packed up.
just like this.
Crazy.
Then you open it up. You're ready to go. There it is. Now this is a lot like the other one that you restored.
Yes.
Now are you going to leave? You're going to leave this paint, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. This one's in good shape. That's
Everything
great.
with this kit is going to stay exactly as is.
Uh-huh.
Because my other one was all painted. That kit there looked like that.
Oh boy.
I mean, it was a disaster.
Great.
So I had to go for the restoration, and I wanted to celebrate the wood.
And I remember that pedal. You
That's
did
right.
a great job
And
on that pedal. There it
There's
is.
the pedal and the stand
Yeah.
right back there.
Primo job. Now there's something else new here that you seem to be working on. Explain
Yes,
this.
now
here.
what this is since I was doing the restoration and going back to factory original and being meticulous, I decided to have a little fun and what I call D-store, to go the opposite direction.
D-store.
So
I
this
like
was a white marine pearl drum that was covered in like a vinyl wrap wood faux. It was all fun. I think used as a field drum. Well, when I started to take it off, the white marine pearl was so cracked and broken that it was unrepairable. So I chipped it all off, I bleached the Duco stripe on the mahogany. This is all the mahogany bleach. I used a pickling stain and then went back with splatter, etc., with steel wool, roughed it up. I used then a clear gloss and then a flat satin on this to really show it. This was all painted, you know, factory paint finish. So I brought that to nickel to create like a little dichotomy.
Yes.
And it's a faux painted calfskin head. So this is a coated white ambassador.
You know, that's a good job. That's a good idea. I see that.
And also the head on the knob tune, that's a coated white ambassador.
No, you're going to have to show me how to do that.
So, absolutely will. And so the snare, I'm going to do the same thing. I have a 10 by 14, then I'll just shop for a 12 and build a kit around this.
Fantastic, you know.
And here's one of the fun. I figured I'd go 100%.
Yes.
And that too is a newer head.
Yeah, I see. It's a remote.
Yeah.
That's great. Joe, you're outdoing yourself here.
So I don't know what my motivation is, but it's certainly there. And what can I tell you?
Tell the folks your other occupation. He's got some other affiliation with Vintage Drum Expos. Tell them about it, folks.
That's down by me, down Delaware. I live in New Jersey, and Joe Gilday ran the Delaware Drum Show for pretty close to 20 years. Well, about 5 years ago, he decided he was no longer going to do it, and he moved to Florida. And unfortunately, a very short period of time after that, he passed away from ALS. So it was about 3 years of who's going to do it, and in that time period, it took me enough time to gather my collection, gather a reputation, so that vendors from all over the eastern seaboard, when I asked them, I said, listen, I'm thinking on doing the show, they said, we'll come down. So the first show I did 2 years ago was 18 vendors in one room. Last year's show, we had to go to a bigger place, and we're up to 35 vendors with 3 clinicians. So it's very exciting that it's catching on and it's building, and I'm looking to go for the long haul, just like how this show was. So it's been very exciting.
It's nice to know that the vintage aspect is continuing on. Because I was a little bit worried for a while. That's why I started making these videos to get you young guys interested, just to show you the history. Once you get bitten by the bug, it's all over, right?
Absolutely.
Joe, it's been fantastic.
Always a pleasure. Thank you so much for it.
It's very informative and fascinating.
Appreciate that.
Guys, we'll be back. Joe Mekler. Vintage Drums Talk once again, coming to you from the Vintage and Custom Drum Show in Chicago. We're here with Mike Corrado again. You know, Mike, good to see you, my friend. A great description of those drums, I'll tell you.
Thanks.
I always like to go to the authority.
My pleasure.
But, you know, this year, once again, I want to reiterate that, you know, the vintage drum community is small, but it's tight. You know, we've got a group of collectors here that have kind of stuck together, and we trade together and we help each other. Well, we lost a brother this year, Tony Lewis. Okay, the whole show is dedicated to Tony Lewis, and I'd like to get your take, because you knew Tony, didn't you?
For about 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, here's a Mike Corrado he knows a million collectors, but there was something special about Tony, wasn't there?
Yeah, he always gave me a call. You know, I bought probably 7-8 drums from him over the years.
Is that right?
And really choice stuff I still own, so it's in the collection still. And he would call up and we'd talk about it. He'd send me photos, and we do every time it was a fair deal. You know.
He always seemed like a happy guy, didn't he?
Yeah.
Even when he was sick.
Yeah.
He didn't let anybody really know. I mean, a few people know when the story spread, but I remember after I heard that, he still was the same. He put his arm around me and give me a big bear hug. I'll put some of those up. You'll see.
Yeah.
But with Mike, he's known Tony.
About almost 20 years.
Jeez,
yeah, almost 20 years.
The first time I met him was when I showed up at the club at the show with that Duncan sock pedal. Remember that year?
Yeah.
And Tony was the first one that said, "Hey, can I see that?" I go over to his booth, and he asked me who I am. I said, "Well, I represent the Southwest Florida Vintage Drum Museum." I felt I had to,
Yeah.
And he was the nicest guy. He said, "Is that for sale?" And I said, "Not really. My brother just dropped it off." He says, "Well, let me know." And gosh, you're leading me on here. But he just has such a nice demeanor.
Yeah.
And I just wish I knew him as long as you did.
Yeah, I know. I used to see him. His booth was right next to Mark Cooper's.
Right.
Yeah, and yeah, he's just a good guy. Always, always honest. We always had fair deals. I always felt happy with the price I paid. Not worrying about if you got the drum for $5. Well, good for him. I feel happy with the deal we made.
Well, the whole show is dedicated to Tony, and so is our show. Vintage Drums Talk, and the whole vintage drum community wishes his family well. And
actually, I could put one more thing in.
Go right ahead.
Just for a plug to help his wife out. Don Bennett's handling the estate as far as all the drums and the memorabilia.
Okay.
So people know Don Bennett. I think it's donbennettdrums.com in Seattle.
I'll get that
and
up.
there'll be maybe some choice stuff people can buy that'll help Lily out. To get rid of some stuff.
I'm glad you told me that. Okay, now you hear that, you guys? Tony's, got some good stuff. So now's your chance, and you'll be helping people out. Okay. So on behalf of the whole vintage drum community and this show and Vintage Drums Talk, we love you, Tony. Rest in peace, my friend. Okay.